I believe we might have actually some lawyers walking out of the courthouse discussing some of these deportations. Let's just see if we can have these people step up to the mic and let's listen in.
I'll get out of your
way.
Hey. Lee, can I put this on you real quick?
Again with that? Okay.
Please, and thank you.
Yeah.
Do you mind?
Do you all want to wait for the print press? Is that all right?
Yeah, we can hold it. Yeah.
All right, it appears that we are going to get some comments here from different attorneys, people there after this court hearing following the deportation of over 200 migrants to El Salvador over the weekend. We heard Marco Rubio and also the president of El Salvador work together to make this happen. Let's listen in here on Live Now from Fox.
Okay. Just go.
Should we start? Hi, I'm Lee Gelernt, L-E-E-G-E-L-E-R-N-T from the ACLU and the lead counsel in this case. We just had a hearing before Judge Boasberg, and our position is even more clear at this point. We had serious concerns going into the day that the government violated a federal court order. Today did nothing to dispel it. If anything, it reinforced that our view that the government may very well have violated this order, perhaps even knowingly violated. I think the judge did not seem to be accepting the government's argument, many of which were implausible on their face. There's a lot at stake here. There's a lot at stake in two ways. One is the use of the Alien Enemies Act. It has only been used 3 times in our country's history, all during declared wars, the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. Congress could not have been clearer that it can only be used where a foreign government or nation is in a declared war with the United States or is invading. This is ultimately then a fundamental question of separation of powers. The president is simply thumbing his nose at Congress. Congress has said when you can use the Alien Enemies Act. Every other administration in the history of the country has abided by those limitations. Abided by those limitations, and therefore, not surprisingly, it's only been used in these 3 declared wars. So we think the Alien Enemies Act cannot be used in this context, but even if it could, what I told the judge today was that there must be individual due process. If a person does not believe they're a member of the gang, can show that, then they're not subject to the proclamation. Yet the administration has not only invoked the act in an unprecedented and lawless way, but they have refused to give individuals the opportunity to show that they're not actually part of the gang. And so we don't know all the individuals who have been removed so far because the government did it in secret and in fact signed the proclamation in secret. But, you know, I would caution people to accept at face value the administration's characterization of all these men. We've seen over and over in the last 7 weeks the government overstate who they've detained. We saw it at Guantanamo. They originally said these are all the worst of the worst. It became clear very, very quickly that many of them had no criminal violation at all, or a minor criminal violation, or just an immigration violation.
We were just
okay, let me just pause for a second. Every time a car goes on. So that's you know, not only have they not had due process to make the showing that they're not a member of the gang, but the government has repeatedly overstated who they're detaining. But again, first and foremost, the Alien Enemy Act cannot be used in this context. The other big issue involved, and the one that was at issue today, and why the stakes are so high, not just because of this unprecedented invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, is the Trump administration's apparent refusal to accept this court's jurisdiction. We are on, as I said in the hearing, you know, I wanted to be very careful and take a pause before I said it, but I do think we are slipping closer and closer to a constitutional crisis. I mean, that term has been thrown around a lot in the last 7 weeks and over the years, but at this point, it seems like the administration is simply walking into court and telling a federal court they can't look at the evidence, they can't stop what they're doing. And we see constant public statements from administration officials criticizing federal judges, saying they don't have authority. I think we're on dangerous ground here in the United States.
We were just here on Friday, sir, for the Guantanamo case. Do you believe the courts aren't moving quickly enough to keep up with these issues?
I think the courts are moving quickly. I think the courts have a lot on their plate, but I think Judge Boasberg's decision shows how quickly the courts are willing to move. You know, we filed this brief with our partners at, with Democracy Forward and the ACLU affiliate here in D.C. at 2 in the morning on Friday night. By Saturday morning, early Saturday morning, well before noon, the judge issued a TRO blocking the transfer out of the country of our 5 named plaintiffs. By 5 p.m. on a Saturday night, he held a 2-hour hearing to expand that TRO to the entire class of people subject to the proclamation and issued that TRO. And had the government complied, many, many people would not have ended up in a Salvadoran prison. And they are, make no mistake about it, in serious danger. The other thing I would say is the government walked into court today and said we can't share any facts. This is all the most sensitive national security material. But yet you cannot turn on the TV, look at Twitter, and not see posts by the United States government talking about it. There was a video of the men getting off the plane in El Salvador. I would suspect, obviously I don't know, that the U.S. had a hand in creating that video. The United States government is retweeting the president of Salvador's cavalier statements about these men. So I do think that many of the federal courts are moving very quickly. Just like us as lawyers, they have a lot on their plate, and they're doing their level best. And I think Judge Boasberg was an example of that.
You said that you're thinking of virtual constitutional crisis. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I think, there are decisions that are made all the time that people disagree with and are extremely polarizing. But that has happened for 200 years plus in our country. What changes here, what the difference is here, is the government's apparent refusal to abide by the federal court's power. I mean, our country is based on the assumption that there are 3 equal branches and that the federal courts will say what the law is and the other 2 branches will adhere to those rulings. Once that ends, we're in a very different situation in this country. We're no longer a country based on the rule of law.
Were you pleased to hear the judge's push, I'm adding the context of pushback on the government?
We were certainly pleased that the judge took this very, very seriously, ordered an immediate hearing. We filed our papers last night, again at 2:15 in the morning. He, by this morning, had already ordered an emergency hearing this afternoon, and we were very pleased that he ordered the government to provide sworn declarations and to provide him with information. He made very clear that he would not stand by and let them just say, we can't provide you with any information.
Is there anything else that you wish was included or would be included in those declarations tomorrow?
No, I think that's enough to start with. I suspect that if those declarations don't satisfy the judge, he may push for more or he may just rule. But I think we will have another chance if we don't accept what's happened. And, it doesn't appear like we're going to be able to see those declarations. That's unfortunate, but we trust Judge Boasberg to go through them very carefully.
If the judge concludes that his order was violated, what redress, if any, could there be for your clients and members of the class who are in El Salvador
Right.
prison?
So that's a great question. I think you're asking beyond the normal sanctions and contempt that a judge always has available if his orders are defied. We will ask the judge to order the government to get these individuals back. I think there's a very serious question about whether a federal judge can ever order a foreign government to do something, and that, the answer is generally no. But here I think we're in a very different situation factually. This essentially is like El Salvador acting like a private prison, holding these individuals, and it appears that the U.S. is paying for it. So the U.S. essentially has constructive custody over these individuals, and there's no question the U.S. has leverage to get them back. So we hope that Judge Boasberg will push very hard to get these individuals back. I don't know how long they will be able to last in a Salvadoran prison.
Do you
now I've lost my train of thought. Can you address why you think the government was so unwilling to provide pretty basic information, since the pretty basic information seems to be out there?
Right. So, I mean, to your point about it, the information being out there, whenever the government feels like it will be in their interest performatively to put information out, they do it, and that's constant. But now they're walking into court and saying all of the information is national security sensitive. I suspect they don't want to provide a lot of this information because it's not helpful to them.
Do you have any sense, the government is claiming that these are all gang members, violent criminals who need to be removed. Do you have any sense of what percentage may fit into that category or may not?
So we cannot answer that because the government has done it all in secret. What I will tell you is a few things. One is our 5 named plaintiffs dispute that they are gang members. We are also hearing from family members now of the people who were put in the Salvadoran prison because they showed their faces in videos. The families are reaching out, and I suspect there are going to be many people coming forward to say these are not gang members. I think lawyers are going to hear that their clients are in the Salvadoran prison and be able to provide evidence that these are not gang members. And the other thing I would just say is, and this is just, not to belabor the point, but this has been a habit by the Trump administration to overstate the danger of the people they've arrested. And so, again, I would caution people before they jump to any conclusions about who these men are. But, and again, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that if they are gang members with serious criminal convictions, there are other ways the United States government can deport them. If they've committed crimes, they can be prosecuted. If they are not allowed to remain in the country, the immigration laws give the government more than enough power to deport these individuals. What this case is about is using a wartime authority during peacetime. And think about the implications of it. The government is saying it's unreviewable for a federal court to look at whether we've designated a particular group as a threat and we use the Enemy and Aliens Act. Well, think about all the different groups throughout American society over the years that have been designated as serious criminal organizations. If the government has this power and the president has this power, any group of people could all of a sudden be designated enemy aliens. The government's position is the courts could not review that. They could be in a minute's notice on a plane and put in a Salvadoran prison.
Sir, what if anything can be done to protect people who are outside the 5 plaintiffs? Because the weekend's order was pretty broad, but yet still people were sent home. Is there anything that plaintiffs, attorneys like yourself could do to protect people who may not be the 5 named folks?
Well, I think the order applies to everyone. I don't think the government's disputing that the order applies to everyone. I think the dispute we were having today was whether those planes were out of U.S. territory and therefore the government didn't have to turn them around. But I think the government recognizes unless and until the judge's order is vacated, they have to comply broadly.
What's your understanding of what the government said its authority was to remove the people on the 3rd plane? And did the judge agree to order the government to clarify?
The judge, we don't know what the authority is, and I suspect that they may have been people who were subject to the proclamation, but we'll obviously have to wait and see. And the judge said he wants to know if anybody was subject to the proclamation. Now, if he believes them factually that there wasn't a single person who was subject to the proclamation and these were just regular deportees under the immigration laws, then it will fall outside of our case.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, ACLU speaking out after a judge holding a hearing over the deportations to El Salvador, making no decision. And of course, we brought that to you live right here on Live Now from Fox. All right, let's continue on right here. We are going to take a quick 2-minute break. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks to my colleague, Andy Mack, for bringing you some of the day's biggest coverage up until this point, and we'll continue to do that now. I'll be with you for the next 4 hours, bringing you top stories, live feeds, and of course, breaking news when it does happen. All right, let's take a quick 2-minute break. We'll be back with